Purrfect Apawcalypse is one of my favorite visual novels of all time. The story is a definition of greatness and simplicity, the decisions are plain but fun, the game overs are brutal but telling, and the main cast of ragtag dogs and cats are extremely enjoyable. Except for one character of the entire franchise, Sparky Fritz. Sparky is someone you think would have an interesting character arc in an apocalyptic scenario, being a selfless and headstrong jock in a mighty cruel world, making plans for everyone and keeping everyone's head on straight, maybe even diving into how that can eat away at a person or how certain choices they made aren't actually for the best or helpful. However, Sparky gets some of the quickest flanderization I've ever seen in media, going from someone who the whole cast would look up to, down to nothing but pathetic jock jokes and being left as a forgotten character in this over-the-top cast. But how could such a simple character arc be destroyed, you may ask? Well, let's find out by discussing Sparky Fritz, a forgotten and pointless character. First, before we get too deep on Sparky Fritz, let me give a quick rundown of what Purrfect Apawcalypse is for those unfamiliar. Also, a huge spoiler alert for those who haven't played the games. Purrfect Apawcalypse is a trilogy of visual novels all about friendship and the decisions you can make to get through various disaster scenarios such as demons, zombies, and even a whole serial killer. You play as an over-the-top joyous dog named Olive Higgins, trying to make friends and maintain friendships as the world around them potentially crumbles. Sparky Fritz being one of the first characters you can discover in the series as Olive. In Purrfect Apawcalypse, Love at First Bite, you find Sparky in a gymnasium barely holding his own against a fat cat demon, where you get an opportunity to save him either by accident or on purpose with a water bottle. Which, believe it or not, Sparky Fritz didn't originally start as an awful character. You think he probably would by the title of the video, but Sparky actually started with a lot of potential as a character. Sparky was a basic hero guy type, someone who would take a bullet for you in a time of need, even sacrificing themselves for your main character in several of the game overs you can stumble upon in the game. The thing is too, it even seemed like Sparky could have been a potential love interest for your main character Olive Higgins at first, from how much they got along and the whole opposites attract narrative they potentially had going for them. He also wasn't only great personality wise, Sparky had a point in the narrative for the game, their part in the story being the main plan maker and the main one to keep everyone motivated, setting the latter half of the story in motion by giving everyone the quest to flood the school and get rid of the demons, along with just attempting to talk with the evil cats in the basement instead of trying to fight them. I even believe Sparky works the best out of all of the cast here since the story is a simple one. A strong man with some flaws, such as not being able to stand up for himself or sometimes being too much of a pushover, but learning to work with his own negative traits with the new friends he has. Although there still are some negatives in here. Most of it, however, is just due to the more condensed nature of the game, not allowing some characters to show their full potential. Which is fine. You can't give him, or any character really, an entire huge well-meaning arc in like the 10-20 minute game experience. The one thing I can say though, is he gets canned and loses fights way more often than he should, giving Sparky an overall feeling that he's a lot weaker than he appears to be or even should be. Him losing to magic and all of the demons makes some sense. It's basically a coughing baby versus a hydrogen bomb. But come on, not being able to hold your own ground against patches is kinda stupid. It's like some routes he kind of does, but other times he just gets folded like a lawn chair. He is supposed to be a buff jock, but the buff isn't really there, so it's just jock, bottom text. I sure hope him getting canned isn't some insane sign or something. Overall, Sparky Fritz in Love at First Bite was honestly a really solid character in that short game. What I'd say is one of the best characters in that game behind someone like Angel. However, this simple base would quickly get butchered as his characterization gets absolutely hit by a car, and a semi-truck, and hit by a freight train, and they hit the second tap, all in the sequel game, Purrfect Apawcalypse, Purgatory Forever. I hate to tell you, they did hit the second tower, Alex. I'm sorry. This game is unfortunately where the hate for Sparky must begin, since Sparky is shoved into the spotlight in the second installment, which you think is a good idea since the developers are already given so many concepts and ideas to work off of from the previous installment, like Sparky potentially faltering as a leader or not being able to stand up for himself, along with excellent new ideas like potential discussion of PTSD and trauma from tragic events, not feeling like you anymore, discussion of masculinity, and so on. It sounds like a recipe for success, just pick an idea and run with it. Although the one issue is every time they give this character potential in this game, they flush it away. Which, it's an issue overall with Purgatory Forever and its weird writing, where they have so many cool ideas like a zombie apocalypse, ghostly possession, Patches returning, and Coco losing her magic, only to immediately shut down the ideas in a matter of minutes, instead of giving the ideas some time to actually fester. Some prime examples being the 1,000 dead dogs getting tamed with one tray of meat and the powerful ghost being exercised in minutes, and so on. The ideas are the definition of rushed, where you have so many concepts but don't give them any time to actually flesh themselves out, and Sparky is an unfortunate victim of the rushed and all over the place writing. To take it from the top, Sparky's arc in this game is supposed to be him learning he can rely on his friends to help him in the darkest times and learning to open up more to Olive and Co. It first starts with Sparky being very secluded due to him having violent gamer rage nightmares and even hearing voices from the Hachiko High School massacre. Although, due to some of Olive's poking and prodding, Sparky starts opening up on this issue, resulting in Olive taking Sparky and Co. to see Coco in an attempt to have that magic witch solve all the mental issues and insecurities with cool magic. Which, it isn't easy to gather everyone to see Coco in the first place, since Brownie and Sparky have actually started a bit of a rivalry. Although, Olive hopes to make everything better by having Coco quote-unquote fix Sparky, so Sparky can be a normal friend again. However, things go south as soon as the cast hear Coco being attacked in her room, where getting a Coco's room leads you to discover the main twist that Patches is back. Although you get no time to digest this as you get hit with another twist when Sparky gets hit with some NyQuil and falls asleep, showing, whoa, Sparky was possessed the whole time. It unfortunately scraps the previous concept and talking point of trauma, but honestly, with the cool character it ends up introducing, and it also adds the idea of Sparky feeling weak, makes up for the fact that it entirely destroys the previously developing idea of Sparky having some sort of PTSD. Since this potential serious talking point is explained away as, it's because a ghost did it. Anywho, the zombies also conveniently break in downstairs, leading Olive and friends to have to fight back, without magic unfortunately, against a possessed Sparky, a serial killer, and zombies. You may wonder how this ties back in with Sparky, and that's because a possessed Sparky breaks Angel's arm and Brownie's leg in the chaos, which you think would lead to some character drama or even some more development for Sparky when everything is eventually solved. Whether it's Sparky feeling self-righteous for Brownie dipping on him during his struggles, or Angel being the spiteful little guy he is. However, when all the conflict gets solved in less than 5 minutes, all it leads to is Brownie just saying one or two vindictive lines, and Sparky suddenly being dead set on justice. Also, side note, a forest zombie apocalypse with possession and a serial killer DLC gets solved in less than 5 minutes of gameplay. It just kind of helps illustrate the point that this Purgatory Forever game has really bad pacing issues. Overall, the idea of Sparky becoming vengeful is a good one in theory. However, with how messy this idea ends up being, this idea should have stayed a theory. The first issue is that this vengeful arc comes at the cost of the other characters in the cast. Since the characters are already shelved due to their injuries, and the writing decides to make the cast get even more overlooked, by immediately having them forgive Sparky and make Sparky not even blink at the fact someone like Brownie mistreated him before this. It makes sense in concept with how friendly all of the cast is written that they would choose to forgive Sparky and pretend nothing happened. However, this unreal friendliness over literally having your limbs broken just adds more boredom to the already lame third chapter of the game. The second issue is that most of this idea is covert or more secret than it really should be. It's not that this game can't do sneaky foreshadowing, it's more that this shouldn't be hidden in the first place. From a character perspective, Sparky is a loud and assertive guy, literally almost choking out Patches in a chapter prior and leading everyone to salvation in Love at First Bite. So making him suddenly bend a knee to Coco just because she said so and not putting up any fight feels so out of character. Someone like him should be fighting his case and be more aggressive of what they do as a group. Instead, they decide to try to make Sparky cold and calculating. Yeah, they make the dumb jock be cold and calculating, which I like the idea of Sparky having some brain cells, and it does allow Sparky to have some good character development by helping with Brownie and Angel's wounds. However, this all just makes Sparky just feel unreal and not like him. He feels out of character. And then, from a general writing perspective of why Sparky shouldn't be hiding these ideas, the third chapter just desperately needs anything to make it somewhat interesting, since the game slows down to a miserable crawl during this portion. The writer's only acknowledgement of this is throwing Sparky's personality off a cliff, basically slapping stupid personality traits in Sparky like being a chud, being irresponsible, and making him extremely selfish, throwing this new Sparky in your face, and running away. Just making Sparky's plan a bit more obvious to the other characters would make this awkward step chapter be more purposeful. It would also help Sparky's character and personality feel just less bipolar or wavering. Which, flash forward to when the inevitable Scooby-Doo, "Let's split up and search for clues," happens, and Sparky runs away from the group with Olive in tow for his Also, I'm doing the copy lame mechanism while I'm kind of realizing that. I'm doing the copy lame mechanism while I'm doing this voiceover. I'm just kind of doing that. And Sparky runs away from the group with Olive in tow for his vengeance mission. Sparky and Olive find a wine cellar in the woods. And in here, Sparky reveals the stolen wand and tries to be heroic, but it's just portrayed as scummy and douchey. Sparky then blasts open the cellar, finding the character of Ginger Claret within. Here, Sparky tries to get his vengeance on Ginger and banish her into the Inferno. However, Olive being Olive stops him before things get too hasty. This in tow leads to the moment that made me realize Sparky is just never coming back as a character. This one scene right here is the one that made me drop all hope I had for Sparky. This single, individual, stupid, and whatever simile the thesaurus can find on stupid line made me break. Just like, how, dude? Okay. So on a surface level, this is supposed to be seen as two characters that are or were inherently selfish and let their selfish desires control them, learning to move on, right? Learning to be more selfless instead of selfish. Using the value of comparison to maybe help show Ginger that Sparky was able to overcome his selfishness and self-destructive thoughts to become a better person and friend. Which, that's giving it a lot more credit and hope than it deserves. But the thing is, Ginger almost killed people, and Sparky is just a soy boy. Yeah, you heard me. He's the virgin part of the Virgin vs. Chad meme. He's the definition of getting no play. Okay, to make a little more sense, this is supposed to be a big character moment for Sparky. Him finally realizing he has been a toxic personality and admitting he has been a jerk and he has done more harm to his friend group than good, along with having such a self-demeaning personality over Halloween night. But from how all over the place the writing is, this dialogue feels so forced and so out of character, since most of the issues he had with his friends were inherently caused by Ginger. Ginger made Sparky physically harm his friends. Ginger put a rift between Sparky and his friends. Ginger had literally been the one making him go mentally insane. It's not even that Sparky continued to harm his friends after Ginger was exorcised from him, or Sparky's own choices harmed his friends. Ginger was at fault for every issue presented by this game. It also hurts that the only thing you can get Sparky on for is his already out of character decision to suddenly take Coco's wand and storm off into the night on a manhunt. Something that is hardly built up on and doesn't even feel like a real idea for Sparky, the guy, instead of Sparky, the plot device. It doesn't even have any consequences. Sparky never gets pressed for nearly killing everyone by anyone but himself. Not in this game, nor the next. This would be fine, but the thing is they try to push this idea that Sparky was also at fault, which just flat out isn't true. The literal most he does while he is in his normal standard character, not possessed or not used as a plot device, is push Olive away in the intro and try to isolate himself, which is a reasonable response for someone who feels out of control of themselves. Sparky doesn't start fights with the cast over whether or not they should pursue Ginger. Sparky doesn't fuss or complain about anything. Sparky doesn't even do anything major like let the zombies in or something. The only negative point you can give him is stealing Coco's wand, which even the game hardly recognizes as a bad thing since this whole Sparky is a jerk narrative is legitimately coming out of nowhere. If anything, Sparky proves more that he is worth it to the group by helping Coco with everyone's injuries from his knowledge of sports medicine. And then Sparky's shallowness is supposed to be compared to Ginger's legit issues of learning to let go of toxic people and the struggles you can have moving on from a toxic relationship. It's a drop in a well, a drop in a lake, a drop in the friggin' Atlantic Ocean! The worst part is too, that this forced text is supposed to be a line of dialogue that gets Ginger to rethink everything. This almost out of character line is supposed to convert Ginger to the good side, along with Olive's pestering innocence. Now, this idea of Sparky helping Ginger cope could work if Sparky tried to spin the narrative into something joyful like his actual character would do, instead of being so spiteful and cynical. Maybe saying that even with Ginger making him look more evil and the mistakes he's made, he's still given an opportunity to make up and be friends with everyone. It also would add more to the ending of the game by giving Olive's text more impact. Speaking of which, in the final act, Sparky gets magically tossed to a wall and unfortunately not tossed out of this series. He also vouches for Patches to come back after Olive's statement to not leave him in Purgatory Forever. Title card! All in all, this game just destroys Sparky and all the potential Sparky had. Just because of the simple fact that the narrative can't decide what in the world they want to do with him. The story is all over the place, and Sparky suffers a lot from this. One moment it leans more into the idea of trauma or mental illnesses, then next is possession and a narrative feeling of weakness, and then Sparky is supposed to be viewed as a douchebag. The writers can't pick a lane and stick with it, leading to Sparky feeling bipolar as a character. If I were to pinpoint a spot where Sparky's character crashes and burns, it's hands down the start of the 3rd chapter when his soul finds his body again, since that is the start of this train wreck. So, with how badly he quickly became in Purgatory Forever due to some awful writing choices, it makes you wonder how he is in the final installment. Since here is where most characters get great explorations and gain even more depth than they had before. Such as Brownie, where they get a whole lesbian storyline, or Angel, where they finally get to close the book with their ex-boyfriend Patches and finally get to move on with their life. Just take a wild guess if anything even slightly happens with Sparky. You want to know what Sparky contributes to this game? One funny gag where he keeps raising his hand to ask Coco dumb questions. Oh, okay. I mean, he technically does more than that, but it's the only thing I find purposeful. So Sparky in this game is naturally put on the back burner after a supposedly big arc from the previous game, which it'd be fine, I guess, if the game really did do something with him. Although, even if Purgatory Forever magically gave him the best arc of all time, you still can at least make him somewhat interesting in Patches Inferno, or at least do something with him. Alright, so Sparky Fritz is one of the several chaperones in Patches Inferno. Specifically, the final chaperone you encounter in the lackluster gym class. Which, if you couldn't tell by now, there's a big trend of Sparky being shoved into the worst portions of the game. It'd be fine if Sparky was the bright spot in these worser periods of these games, but more often than not, he just doesn't do or add anything. He just stands there. There aren't even any funny jokes to be told from Sparky teaching a gym class, so he just kind of babysits the other dumb jocks there. Even then, it isn't like he's trying to prevent a full-on brawl or anything by being the calm middleman. He just tells his pal Rover, "Hey man, you gotta be inclusive now." And he just listens with no strings attached. No struggle or fight back or nagging insistence. Maybe if Sparky was put as the head of the literature class, for instance, then maybe it'd provide for some better dumb jock humor, and potentially even give him an unfamiliar environment to work off of and more character interactions to be had. It also would help if there were more character interactions in general you could have in gym. Since you're only given 2 other characters to work off of as the new main C Patches, and only 2 characters for Sparky to work off of that are extremely dumb and don't do anything. The rest are legitimately background characters you cannot interact with. Compare this to home economics, you have 5 individual characters in that class to interact with, and most of them provide some sort of statement to the story rather than just, haha, you're a dumb dog, with the 3rd and only interesting character in the class, Ginger, being in the class for 30 seconds. That's all. It'd be nice if you could, as Patches, pit people against one another in this class, and it'd honestly help the weak narrative of cats versus dogs in general. Otherwise, in gym, Sparky is like a distant and weird mentor with extremely on-the-nose lines in the good route, while just being a dumb brick wall stopping you from completing your evil plan in the bad route. It's like they don't expect you to know what Sparky went through in the second game, so they say specific lines to account for it, even though it's almost required to play the previous games in order to understand this one. You play as a serial killer soul in a twink cat's body who is given a chance at redemption for his previous heinous acts. The only things I can give Sparky in Patches Inferno is that the best moment he has of all the games is in this one. However, it isn't even canonical, since it's a game over. That moment being when Sparky goes haywire in response to Patches throwing a nail-filled baseball straight to his eye. It gives you an air of what his character could have, and maybe even should have been. Someone who is on the balance of good and evil, or someone who has had a shaky past with his masculine nature, or even just the base idea of a kind guy finally snapping back at the villain. It's an excellent moment as it shows that Sparky truly has that dog in him. However, it's very telling when the best moment Sparky has isn't even in the canonical route of the game and is a niche game over segment, since unfortunately, that's literally all for his character in the franchise. He doesn't have any moment in the ending, and the whole happy ending talk segment doesn't add anything to Sparky's character, unless you count the thought of Patches and Sparky working out together. It's unfortunate since Purrfect Apawcalypse patches Inferno is when most of the characters burst into their own, and even the new characters added are amazing at what they do. Ginger ends up being very essential to the plot due to her heritage. Brownie goes from being the haha funny character to actually having a deep moment confessing her feelings for Coco. And even Angel gets a second chance to shine here from the whole weird ex-lover dynamic they have with Patches, even though Angel still ends up being boring overall. And what does Sparky get in Patches Inferno? Nothing. He doesn't even have a cool outfit like he did in Purgatory Forever. All in all, Sparky is the most underutilized character in the Purrfect Apawcalypse franchise, since Sparky has hands down the best start in Purrfect Apawcalypse, being the headstrong character of the newly made group, only to be shut down again and again through the Purrfect Apawcalypse franchise, having his character arc be canned and revamped over and over in Purgatory Forever. Going from an actually interesting cast member to someone you could hate very easily for their suddenly stupid, selfish, and extremely out of character decisions that they make, not taking time that was clearly needed to develop Sparky as a character and the relationships of the cast, resulting in a very, very disappointing appearance in the final game, Patches Inferno. To take a quick example from Purgatory Forever, Sparky just gets away with stealing Coco's wand in the previous game, and he isn't held accountable for his actions by this game, nor the next. Which, honestly, that alone explains his whole character. An act of stealing a weapon from another character is means for deep drama and some cool character interactions, but this idea is glossed over in favor of other concepts since that game is overcrowded with ideas. This was a character with great potential for interpersonal conflict and for storytelling, just to be held back by a lackluster game in an excellent franchise. Which, producing this video got me to think, does anyone actually like Sparky? Aside from just liking his character design, the base idea of a hot jock, and the cool as heck leather jacket he wears in Purgatory Forever, does anyone actually enjoy Sparky as a character? I rarely see anyone online praise him or even have something simple as a profile picture of Sparky, or say what they like about him. Like, this is a genuine question. Please let me know your own personal opinion of him in the comments, since I don't know what most think of him. I should even, hopefully, have a survey in the description for the franchise as a whole for a larger video I have coming soon. I just find Sparky to be an awful character from a writing perspective, and all my friends that I've shown this game to had the same collective idea that I had. He was great in love at first bite, but had an insane downfall. It got so bad my musician friend Iris Time started calling him the one who shall not be named, and even made a diss track on him. Oh, the potential you had, my boy. Hashtag justice for Sparky.